left the music business around my late 20s, I began as a production assistant. It was interesting because I was on set with people who were my peers, Ludacris and like Jazzy Faye and all these people that were big in music. It's one of those things where you go from being working in this studio and these are your clients, you're sitting across the desk from them and they're paying their invoices to you, to you going to a set and you're picking up trash and passing out water.
Here with Bigger Than Goals podcast with your boy Sean Suge Amos. I'm here with the lovely and talented executive producer and television television executive producer and television executive Erica Bryant. Thank you for coming.
Of course, thank you for having me.
No problem.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, I've read a little bit about you.
Okay.
But
All
I want
things, I hope.
all great things. All great things,
Yeah.
of course. So what made you get into, well, first off, where are you from?
I'm originally from San Francisco, California. Born and raised from the Bay.
Really?
Yeah, so, and then I went to college in Atlanta. So I went 3,000 miles away from home and went to an HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
And grew up in Atlanta for the most part. Like, I got there at 17, stayed there till I was about 27, 28 years old.
Right.
Then I moved here to LA.
Nice. How was the transition from, because I used to live in the Bay myself.
Okay.
And I did live in, I lived in Fremont.
Okay.
I lived in Hayward, Berkeley, and San Francisco. So, and also, I've never lived in Atlanta, but I've been to Atlanta quite some time. How was the culture shock? Or was it a culture shock at all?
I'll say this. I think growing up in the Bay Area for me, it's very integrated, right? And so coming up in high school, of course we had black people, we had like a lot of Asian people, white people, all that. I think for me, I was missing that black cultural piece in the city. And so going to Atlanta, that was one of my main choices for going to a black college, because I really wanted to understand and learn more about our culture, our history, and just really get it from that perspective. Nice. And that was a time too. I mean, this was back in a different world, Cosby Show era. So, different world was like, oh, black college is everything. So I'm like, I need to be there doing that. So that was kind of what drew me in. And being there, though, it wasn't culture shock. It was very just eye-opening. And I felt at home. I felt so welcomed. I felt so safe. I felt really alive. You know what I mean? And it allowed me to develop in a different part of my brain. I think every child should go to college, only for the experience. You don't necessarily need the degree to do entertainment and things like that. But I think college, what it does for you is that it takes you from having a citywide view to a worldwide view.
Nice.
It helps you to have this understanding of other people and how you fit into that world. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. Because I'm originally from Philadelphia.
Okay.
So like I said, I went to the Bay Area. I lived in the Bay Area. That's for the first time I had an opportunity to see diversity.
Okay.
My best friends I had two best friends out there. They was Afghan and Filipino.
Wow.
And that was the first time me like interacting with another race outside of like just going to restaurants and stuff like that.
Yeah, and see, for me culturally, all I had was diversity. So I wanted something that was a little bit more honed in. I wanted more of that sisterly, brotherly piece. And I got that at Clark Atlanta University.
Is that where you started your entertainment career?
Yeah, so I studied TV, radio, film.
Okay.
My intention was to go into radio and music. I was in the music business at the time. I worked at LaFace Records. I worked at Patchwork Studios. I was growing myself, I think, to becoming like an A&R or a radio personality, something like that. And as I went through school, though, I think that I still had that dream after I stayed at LaFace for about 3.5, 4 years through my entire tenure there. And then same as Patrick, I ended up running, co-managing that studio for them. So, my intention was to be in the music business, not television, but they didn't have a music business major back then. So the closest thing that came to it was TV, radio, film, mass media arts is what they called it back then. So when I graduated with that magna cum laude, was a straight A student, and worked 2 jobs at the same time. Like I had a good time in college and I had fun, but I was always bookish because I'm like, education is my way out of whatever situation, right? To success or whatever it may be. So, yeah, I think, I forgot what the question was. I talked myself out of it.
No. The question was, is that how you started in entertainment?
Yeah, so in Atlanta, being in the music, and then I think when I left the music business around my late 20s, it's in my book. I wrote a book called Doing It Scared during the pandemic. And so I write in the book, it's about like literally taking leaps of faith and taking bets on yourself. And so leaving the music business was me betting on myself and just trying on my degree that I had spent all this money on and all these years on, trying to find what I wanted to do, I began as a PA, a production assistant.
Nice.
So I went on to PAing like at Sierra's music video was my first big job, my first job as a production assistant. I made $175.
Nice.
I worked 27 hours straight, no
Wow.
sleep, and was on set with. It was interesting because I was on set with people who were my peers, right? So peers from the music business, they were clients at Patchwork of mine, like Ludacris and like Jazzy Faye and all these people that were like big in music. I
Were they
got
big at that time?
they were
Yeah.
huge at that time.
Really?
Yeah, Luda was like, yeah, he
Yeah,
was big.
Luda was that guy
Yeah,
for,
so
for a
I mean,
minute.
and so I was also a P on his set at one point too, and it's one of those things where you go from being working in this studio and these are your clients, you're sitting across the desk from them and they're paying their invoices to you, to you going to a set and you're picking up trash and passing out water, and it was severely humbling,
Uh-huh.
because I was late in my 20s, and I come from this mid-level executive to this PA, and I hate to do levels like that, but that's what it was because I was making no money whatsoever.
Mm.
But I always say that I know that it was meant for me because when I did that 27 hours on Sierra's My Goodies video shoot, I went home that next morning and I was like, I'm exhausted, but I loved it. And I
Yep.
was like, I want to do it again. And that's when I was like, okay, I have a bug. And I just kept on going.
How did you manage it though? Like, as far as like, cause I always say you have to, whatever you love, you can do it for free, right?
I agree.
But at the same time, bills are coming in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of distractions out there. People want to go out. You want to have fun. How are you managing as far as like your mental with trying to pursue your career, but not always having the funds?
I mean, I think I made it work. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I cut back on things that I was accustomed to before that.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up odd other PA jobs because that was just a 1 day, a 2 day thing. So I didn't. That wasn't a job. It was just an opportunity.
I assume they don't. None of these PA jobs
They're paid, but they're not paid
paid
well.
well. That's
Yeah.
what.
And some people do make a living on that if you have consistent work. But back then, Atlanta wasn't a hub like that. It was just building up the whole TV film
Right.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was tough. And then I did get a job, and I worked for Tyler Perry for about almost a year, in
And this
2005.
is why you still in the music industry. Okay.
Yes, I was kind of getting transitioning out. So I was dibbling and dabbling, and I had left Patchwork, and LaFace was like behind me. I worked at their publishing company, Hitco. I just did a bunch of jobs in Atlanta in the music business, and then as I was transitioning into television, I did the year with Tyler, which was amazing. And I was the coordinator for his film, the soundtrack for his film, Diary of a Mad Black Woman.
Yeah.
So I got my
I remember
first
that.
film credit, which was cool.
Nice.
And then after I left him after that year, that's when I came to LA. I had again found a job on Craigslist at the time. They were looking for production assistants to help them with their show America's Next Top Model.
Uh-huh.
I applied, sent in my resume through a girlfriend that I knew at the time, and we both showed up that day. And me and another couple girlfriends, we just drove and followed them. So I stalked the casting director. I was very determined, very conscientious, very much like I'm gonna work
You
with
can't do
you.
that now, though.
You
You
can't.
can't.
You
You
can't do that
can't. You
now.
can't. You
You
can't
can't do
stalk
that
them
now.
no more.
But in a way that I was following them on their tour. So
Right.
I was in Atlanta. Then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna be in Tennessee." I was like, "I'm driving to Tennessee," so I drove to Tennessee. And she's like, "You're here? Okay, well come work." And so I worked that day. She's like, "I'm gonna be in Florida." I'm like, "I'm driving to Florida." So we literally took my little Honda Civic and drove all around that whole
He
region,
was determined.
following.
He
Yeah, and
was.
so she would remember me, and I was making maybe $125 a day for 12 to 16
And this
hours.
was in film, right?
This was in TV.
So this was this your transition to from the music industry?
Yeah.
How what was the biggest difference in it? Because I know both all entertainment, but it's both as far as the background of it is different as far as like the way people handle business, the way checks is handed out. What was the difference for you?
I think television for me, my path has always been I'm working for myself, right?
Mm,
I'm a freelancer. When I was in the music business, I worked for a company and I was being paid a check every 2 weeks. And I'm on that same at LaFace, and that was more of an internship, so I was not getting. It was like more of a stipend back
mm-hmm.
then. So this was a huge leap of faith for me to leave the music business and to go into television, film, and freelance because you don't eat if you don't kill anything, right? You
Right.
don't eat anything you don't catch. And so I had to hustle. I'm online all day, like looking for jobs and sending out my resume. I'm meeting people and just having my face out there, being willing to work. And it was really, like I said, a very humbling, but it was also building character in me in a way that I knew that no one could make my path better than I could.
Right.
So it was just one foot in front of the other. And how I managed it was just like that. I did it scared and one foot in front of the other.
And you did it, and you seemed very determined. Was it? Where did the determination come from? Was someone in your family, like your mom pushed you, your dad pushed you?
No, I think it was just me. I think I had a really, tumultuous childhood growing up. And so
Hmm.
I think, my drive was I want to make a better life for myself.
Nice.
I don't want to fall victim to some of my what I'd seen friends and other family members like go through. I just really wanted to be successful. And I
Nice.
always saw myself as being wealthy and still working on that part, but you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Well, we
But
all.
just always successful and just, playing by my own rules in a way where my talent can shine through and not being a leader and not a follower, you know?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, what? How many years were you working before you had like that not say big break, but a break? Like, you know what? I'm here because I always say like people want to. Well, I see like people want to pursue
Mm-hmm.
things, but then they get a little scared, worried about like how many years it's going to take because life is still going.
It is.
Life is still life,
It is.
and so I think that's important to know like what time
I think it's interesting because I don't know that I believe in my walk that I've had a big break even yet, right?
really.
Yeah, I think that I've had opportunities. I think that I meet God where God meets me where I'm at, and I think
Hmm.
that, the Bible says, God helps those that help themselves. So I just always try to stay ready so I don't have to get ready. So that's studying, it's reading books, it's like reading the trades, it's understanding what's happening in the whole cipher of entertainment. So I mean, my first job if I had a break from like taking from Atlanta that brought me to LA, it would have to be me working on America's Next Top Model.
Oh, nice.
Me following that woman for those 3 months and kind of, just following their tour schedule and just showing up and working and busting my hump to prove to her that I was worthy of a position if something opened up. It took a year, I want to say maybe a year and a half
Mm.
of me waiting and just still doing odd jobs until she called me. And I was doing stuff like she gave me her business card, so I would eat. This is when email was still very new back then. So
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Thanksgiving. Hope all is well with you and your family. Just keeping on your
Was
radar."
she checking it?
She was checking it.
Oh,
She's like, "Oh,
really?
great to
Okay.
hear from you. I got you in mind." So I did that for a good 6 to 8 months. Like, and she didn't give me anything. And also she was really nice to me, and so it wasn't me kissing her butt. It was more like I just want to be in your mind, and I'm here to work, and I'm
Mm.
ready to work. And so
Persistence.
she got a persistence
Hmm.
exactly. And so she had one of her people on the staff, I guess, quit. And I remember I was hanging out with a girlfriend. We didn't have money, so we would be just hanging out at the mall, going to Sephora and testing perfume and stuff and
Uh huh.
trying on face creams and all this stuff. And I got a phone call, and it was a lady, and she's like, "Hey, it's Michelle." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, "Hold on." So I run out to the hall of the mall, and I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, "Hey, so I actually have an opportunity. One of my staffers is moving on to the greener pastures, and I have a spot. This was a Tuesday."
Right.
She's like, "Can you be here on Monday?" I didn't have any money. All I had was my mortgage money, and I owned two homes at the time. Homes in Atlanta back then was like they were super cheap.
Yeah.
So I owned a home in Ackworth, and I owned a home in Norcross. And so I was like, I don't have any. I was like, yeah, I'll be there, sure, whatever. I said yes before I even knew. I'm like, yes, God. I always say yes. The answer is always yes, and then you figure out the
Rest
rest.
from there.
Yeah,
Yep.
from there. And I took my mortgage money, and I think I got some frequent flyer mile points from somebody that I knew, and got my flight to here January 1st, 2006, and I never went back.
I liked it.
Never moved back.
That's
I've been here ever since.
that's why I came to. Well, I came to California 2007 June 15th.
Okay.
I'll never forget it because that was the first time I actually not been on a plane, but bought my own plane ticket. And the plane
Mm.
ticket at that time was $170.
Yeah, I think mine was like four or something. And it was
Really?
I
I
got
had
it.
a one way. Did you have a round trip?
I had a round because I didn't. She said I'm gonna be
Ah,
here. She's like, this will be a 2 month gig. She's like, she's like, I can't give you a full time, but 2 months you'll be on the show. You'll be casting, and I'm like, okay, great. As a casting assistant, which is a level above a PA at the time, and I'm like,
mm.
great, I'll take it, awesome. And I got the round trip ticket and came here, like I said, January 1st, and never went back. And we're in 2023. I never moved back in.
So you went through a whole 8 month period where you're just emailing and you're waiting for that opportunity. Did you ever have doubt in your mind? If you had doubt in your mind, what did you do to overcome it?
Um, of course you have doubt. I mean, I think I always remind. I'm a very much a Bible girl. I believe in Jesus and God is my
Hmm.
savior. So I feel like delay doesn't mean denial.
Right.
You know.
Uh,
And so it was just trouble doesn't last always. It's gotta crack at some point. So
absolutely.
it's a matter of just holding on. Hold on. Like it's not you're not gonna get a no forever. At some point a yes comes and it may not come it may come from the least expected space or person, if you will. So for me, yeah, I just stayed on my knees, I prayed, and also I just tried to be in a space of gratitude and thankfulness for where I was. You
Right.
know, I didn't have a lot of money, but I did have a roof over my head. I was losing my house in the process of losing my house. But I was like, well, I still got a house. I ain't homeless yet. You know what
Right.
I mean? And I'm still eating every day. And even if I was only eating ramen noodles, I was still
So
eating
you,
every
yep.
day. So it was just being in a space of gratefulness and thankfulness and trusting God that I had to learn, or I did learn in that period and period subsequently after that. You don't know that God is your provider until He proves that to you.
Absolutely.
People are like,
Yeah.
oh, shout, oh, he's my. But I lived it. And so today, when I don't work, I'm like, well, He's already shown me. So I'm like, I can't worry. Like, He shows up and shows out every time.
You always say when things not going your way, when you want it to go your way, it will eventually. But in that period, it's just preparing you to
Mm-hmm.
be able to accept your gift.
That, and I think it's also not getting mad at the situation. I think sometimes God will allow a storm or to go through a wilderness to see how you respond. And if
Mm.
you're like kicking and screaming, like, I can't stand this, this ain't fair. It's like, it is fair. Your life could be way worse. And that's why you have to stay in a place of gratitude and thankfulness and, like, you know what? It could be worse, and at least I have this. And if you can find two or three things to be thankful for, focus on those. Don't worry about what you can't control,
Yep.
and just be
Abs-
thankful for the things that are in your grasp, and thankful every day about those three things, and watch it turn into 30 things that you're
Yeah.
thankful for.
Absolutely. You seem like a person. Well, not seem like you are a person who just make the best out of anything.
Yeah.
So you had this 2 month opportunity. How did that work out for you?
I worked my butt off. I worked late hours. Again, I think, work ethic is something that I think comes from largely from my dad and some from my mom as well. But my dad, is a construction worker, and woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning every morning when I was a kid, and stayed at work till like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and was just very hands on. So I think for me, work ethic is what stands out. And I think if I'm telling someone, what is it that makes you or that makes you stand out, you want to perform.
Right.
You want to do your best. You want to let your light shine. You want to let your gift be, you know, on stage and not afraid to be corrected, not being a know-it-all, not
Mm.
just striving for titles, not just striving for a check. It's like I want to be good at what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to serve, right? And I think that sometimes people get lost in the sauce that I know that I'm a servant on this
Right.
planet. I know that I have this bodysuit, but I'm here to serve
Right.
and use my gifts in that service. And so if I have a job and I'm working with someone on that job, I just was all about serving. I'm like, what can I do? Do you need anything else? Da-da-da. Like, and it wasn't like I was kissing butt again. It was just more like I want to be here and I
Uh-huh.
want to be great at this and teach me what you know. Excuse me. Teach me what you know. So that was kind of where my head was with it.
Good. Well, and so what? So you got this opportunity, but now how did you transition into the person you are at this moment, as far as the
Mm-hmm.
TV executive
Um,
producer?
from casting, I stayed in that for about 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got bored with it. I got stagnant,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a firm belief if you're not growing, you're dying.
Mm-hmm.
So grow. It was time to grow. Once I got it was mundane to me, and I'm like, it's time to do something else. I think I want to produce. And I'm also on set, and I'm seeing as we finish casting, I'm seeing producers on set, and they're doing story and they're interviewing, and I'm like, I want to do what they're doing. And what's that little machine they're listening? Like, I want to have those earphones. I want that. So it was
Right.
more like it was. I was I'm always curious, and so I was curious about what they were doing, so I would ask questions, and so they would tell me, and I'm like, well, can I listen? And they let me. I'm like, that's cool. So I just literally got curious,
I mean, what
and
is going on the earphones though? Like I always
they're
wanted to notice. Like what?
what he's doing right now. He's listening to us.
Oh, okay.
So they're mics,
uh,
right? But he's listening. You know what I mean? So the thing about TV is that the cameras disappear at a point when someone's in front of the camera, and they kind of fade into the wallpaper or into the plaster in the walls.
Mm-hmm.
So people become really natural with themselves and they start talking, and then they don't remember that they're always being listened to. And
I got you.
so I was listening. I'm like, that's really cool. So I literally was like, well, I think I want to be a producer. And then came another 8 month period where I didn't have any work. So I quit. The next opportunity came for me to go back to the next season, and I said no. And it was one of the roughest because I had been through two stints in Atlanta of not working for 8 months, right?
Right.
After leaving the studio, then after leaving Tyler, and here I'm in LA, and LA is a whole different. When you ain't working in LA, it ain't like not working in Atlanta. It's a whole different world.
What's the difference? Because I've
The price
only.
of living.
Oh, gotcha.
The
Gotcha.
price of living, and it's just a different beast. You can get by and kind of survive even back then, maybe not so much today, but on unemployment,
Mm-hmm.
if you manage your money well, like you can be okay for a while. Here, no, not so much. And so,
Even back then.
yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah. This was in 2008.
Oh
And
yeah, that's not too far.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it was tough, and I just stayed, prayed up and figured out. Just was waiting for the opportunity that a lot of no's. I was interviewing, I was taking meetings and etc., reaching out to people. Networking is huge in our business. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be in entertainment, you have to network with people, and that's just checking in. Hey, I don't want anything. Hope all is well with you. Just wanted to send you my credits over. Like it's kind of like a natural thing that comes in our business.
Right.
And you ordinarily, when you're working, you get a job, your next job from your current job. So we'll do a show together for 2 months. And I'm like, what do you got next? Oh, I have this. I'm gonna refer you, and then you just kind of pass. You bring people with you and things like that.
Nice. So
Yeah.
you went through two 8 month spurts
This is my
where
third in LA.
third.
Yeah, in LA.
Jeez. So what you ain't? So what made you not quit though? Like a lot of people just they quit, they stop, they look, listen, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
You are already, and then not to mention you have already received some type of success,
Yeah.
and you're seeing your peers flourish. You're seeing
Yeah.
the Ludacris
Yeah.
on TV getting
Yeah.
awards, the Sierras on
Yeah.
TV. So you never felt like, man, I just gotta quit. This is
Well, but here's the thing: you quit, and then you end up where,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Like
I
if
agree.
you're midway on the rung of the ladder, me quitting here, I'm never gonna get there.
Mm,
I'm only gonna go here or change a ladder. I'm assuming of some sort. And
mm,
so for me, it was more so. No, it wasn't about quitting. It was just like I did pray though, and I was like, God, if this is not for me, take it away from me.
mm,
Take away my desire, and I will go be a bank teller. I will go and work for the bus company. I will do whatever. Like if I will be a whatever,
mm.
average Joe, whatever
Right, right.
whatever that means. And within a week of that or two tops, I
Of that
got
prayer.
of that prayer.
All right, so listen, that's the prayer, y'all. Y'all always ask for Sierra prayer. This is Erica prayer.
Yes, God, if it is not meant for me, please remove it from me and give me confirmation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so nothing happened, and I'm like, all right. So then I go on a couple interviews, and I get an opportunity to do going from being a PA, I was going to become an associate producer, right?
Right.
So and PA normally is on the logistical side of TV. Then there's the creative side. So there's a creative PA, but I was not a creative PA. I was a regular like PA. So when I got the opportunity to do the job interview, I was like, okay, this is cool. I'll go in, killed the interview, didn't get the job, and I was like,
Mm.
dang it.
That happens a lot
Yeah.
at
Oh
that
yeah.
level.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And but then I didn't. But again, it's the reaction, right? My reaction wasn't like, oh, I need this. Like, God, what are you doing? It was like, okay, so that wasn't it. Must be something else. Must
Yep.
be something else. All right, I trust that that wasn't meant for me. When they called me back a week later, I got offered not the job that I applied for, but the job above that.
Wow.
It was like maybe like almost double the money.
What was the title?
That was a field producer,
Nice.
and it
And there's
was
a field producer.
mm-hmm.
So can you explain a little bit what
So
a
a
field
field
producer do?
producer, that is the person who kind of does all the handling of the talent. They do the interviews of the talent. For this, it was for Extreme Makeover Home Edition.
Uh-huh.
And so I was going to be traveling 20 months, 20 days out of each month
Okay.
for a full year.
Nice.
And come home for 10 days, change your bags out, go back on the
So you was
road.
busy. You was
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah. And so it was giving me a chance. I saw all of America on you know what I mean, during
Nice.
doing that show. So it was like, I was gonna cry and bitch and moan about that other position, but I got this better position. However, it was the hardest job I ever had because I didn't have experience. So I
Mm.
had to learn on the job in the moment. And it made me great though. It made me great because it was like I was climbing ladders and having an interview, walking across steel beams on houses, and dealing with 100 volunteers while directing 3 cameras and my 2 other producers. Like I was thrown in the deep end,
Uh-huh.
and it was like sink or swim. And I don't swim in real life, but I
Uh,
swim and when it comes to that kind of
so
situation.
once you realized you didn't know what you was doing, how did you
Oh, I
approach
cried.
it?
I cried
Really?
in my room by myself, and then I dried my tears. And when I was like, okay, so here's what we're gonna do, and I just figured it out. I asked questions when I didn't know the answers to things, and it was teachable. I was just
Mm.
teachable. You know what I mean? And
I think that's the biggest thing too. Being teachable, willing to be coached, willing to learn, understand you don't know everything. Even now, I don't know everything, and I'm okay with admitting, I'm okay with asking. So,
absolutely.
like I truly believe that helps you push forward.
Yeah, it's a level of humility and knowing that again, that old saying again, if you're not growing, you're dying. So that means you're never gonna know it all. And when you know it all, you're dead.
Hmm.
Like that's when you're like with God already, and you're like, oh, I see everything now. But when you're here, none of us know it all. I don't
Right.
care if you are the top of your game. You don't know everything. No one does.
Uh-huh.
And so keeping that heart of that, I think, is important.
So you as a producer, but
Hmm.
then you're also a writer.
Yes,
So,
yes. I I've been writing my entire life. I mean, I started writing poetry when I was a small kid,
mm,
and always made up songs in my head and things like that. So
right. So you
back
used
in
to rap too.
no, no, I'm
All
not a rapper. I mean, I can keep up with the rappers on the radio and sing their songs, but I
right.
don't write my
I'm
own
just
damn
I'm
stuff.
just I'm just trying to find some hidden talent.
No,
That's
I can
all.
flow there. I can flow their flow. I'm good at mimicking. But no, I started songwriting. So I was a songwriter in
Hmm.
Atlanta, when I was in the music business, and so I won like a songwriting competition once. When I was at Patchwork still, I had written a song. Won $3,500. It was a
You
high
still
note.
do you remember it?
Oof. It was called No Way. I
Oh,
wrote it with a very popular producer now. His name is Adonis,
uh,
um, who's produced for all the stars, etc. But it was called No Way, and I won $3,500 doing that. It was just, and I was a member of ASCAP songwriting, so I did that, won that competition, and then I also wrote a song for the co-wrote a song on the Barbershop soundtrack. This is all before I moved to LA, so I
uh,
was in that business meeting people, and I was writing songs, and so writing has always been a part of my life. Came to LA, and of course, when you're producing, you're writing scripts, you're writing things like the beats of the day, which is like the flow of the day. You're writing the
hmm
schedule, but if you're like,
hmm
hey, we're gonna come in today, you're gonna meet with Sean, you're gonna da da da, like I'm writing all those things out. But as far as the book goes, during the pandemic when the world shut down, I knew I had a book in me for the past 15 years or so or longer.
hmm
And because the world had stopped, I was like, well, what better time to sit down and try and focus on that? And I've been getting ideas and typing them in my notes in my phone, like what I want to talk about.
Right.
And the title I already had in my head, which was Doing It Scared.
Mm,
So it's Doing It Scared, an inspirational guide to conquering fear.
that's powerful.
And thank you.
Hmm.
And I wrote the book. My first commitment, I was like, well, how do I even start? Like, where do I start? What do I do? So I read a couple books. I took a couple seminars online, and my thing was I'm going to commit to writing 10 minutes per day. That's it.
Mm,
That's not overwhelming. It's not too much to bear. And if I write something great, awesome, it goes in there. If I don't, I can toss it. But 10 minutes is what I was dedicating to myself every day. I did that, of course, on some of those days, 10 minutes turned into 2 hours or 3 hours or 45 minutes or whatever.
right.
Over the course of 8 weeks, I finished my book.
Wow.
Just by saying, I'm going to do this.
No AI, no nothing.
No
Just
way. No, all my heart, all me. And the Spirit of God did, like, I feel like I didn't write that book. That book wrote me, and I
uh-huh.
birthed it. You know what I mean? It came through me. So I don't have children, but I feel like this book and the subsequent ones that come after that those are like the children, and that's my legacy that I leave with people once I'm gone.
Nice.
Outside of the people that I touch and inspire.
So did you do any like screenwriting at all? Because you also executive
Produce, yeah.
producer and
I don't do, so I have scripts that I've written, but nothing that's been like out there that you would know.
oh,
Not
yeah. Uh,
yet.
all good. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
just listening to your story, it just seems like you wrote the book, but you couldn't wrote that book without going through what you was going through.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Right.
it's a really powerful book because I take you through a journey of me leaving the music business, going into television,
Mm-hmm.
and the fears that pop up for me in that, right? And I always feel like fear is this mountain, and the blessings that God has for you is on this side of that mountain. So if you don't climb this mountain, you never get to see the sea of blessings that God has for you.
Very true.
So when you're in fear, you're here and you're this small, and the mountain is this big. And so it's like, how do I get to the other side? And it's like, you got to attack it. You got to just go move into what you're afraid of. Go toward that thing. And I know for me, my life lesson in this life, in my life here, I think is that if I'm afraid, I have to do it.
Yeah.
And I hate, I'm
Yep.
like,
I'm the
oh
same way.
man.
I'm the same way.
I'm
I
like, man,
totally
I'm
get it.
scared. I'm like, oh, okay.
Another risk. Another 8 months.
Yeah, yeah,
Another
exactly.
8 months. So now we're in the strike,
Yes.
and I guess it's another stint where
I'm
we
at eight
an
months again,
unknown.
actually. I'm at 8 months again, actually, of not working.
Wow.
Yes, my fourth time. I'm like, okay, God. At least I know what it is when it comes, right?
Yeah. Now you can.
I'm
Now
not
you
like beating my
comfortable
head
being
against the wall.
uncomfortable.
But no, I just trust. And yeah, the strike is affecting a lot of people. I'm an unscripted television executive and producer. And so it's affecting our side in that prior to the strike, it was a slow year already. Normally, we're like hitting the ground running in January. I didn't. That wasn't happening this year in 2023.
Well, let me know. What
Yeah.
is an unscripted? What does that
So
mean
that's like
exactly?
reality. So
Okay,
that's
got it,
like
got it.
game shows. That's
Uh huh.
reality. That's docu follows. Things like that. That's like the I've done all the shows from um, like I said, Undercover Boss, the Extreme Makeovers, Iyanla Fix My
Uh
Life.
huh.
My newest show is on Hulu called Secrets and Sisterhood, The Solzadas. That's unscripted. Another show that I have on Roku is called The Next Black Millionaires. So any of these formatted shows you see, like Big Brother, like all those shows are not scripted,
Uh-huh.
so they're in the unscripted category.
Got it. But so you can so you're not. Are you still like affected as much as the writers or?
Ordinarily, I would say no, but
Uh
because the industry is changing so much, there's been a lot of turnover in executives at the different studios and things. People are being fired, people are losing their jobs, and so there's also been like this freeze on buying stuff, and like so it's one of those things where they're not greenlighting a whole lot. Meaning, and if they're not greenlighting unscripted stuff, that means there's nothing for me to show run and executive produce, right?
got it.
So there's some stuff going on, but it's not as we're not affected as much as the scripted side is.
Oh, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so that makes sense. So I'm like, 'cause I know you said unscripted, but so the reality shows they're still going on. We
Some
still
are.
can support them.
Yes.
All right, I just
Yes.
want to make sure because I'm standing with you guys. I don't want to,
Yeah.
promote anything that we shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I support the writers and the actors, of course. They're striking on top of the writers' strike, so it's a lot
Hmm.
going on. I'll say this: am in agreement that having AI come in and kind of take over and do these. It's so it has no heartbeat, right?
Mm.
Like there's something. It's so funny because I know a few of our friends were like, "Oh, let's put it in AI," and then I read what I wrote and I read what they wrote, and there's a lack of heart. There's a
Right,
lack of feeling. It's very wordy and flowery, and it sounds amazing, but it
right.
also it's vacuous a little
Uh-huh.
bit, right? It has, and there's something to the human heartbeat in writing, and I think we should not ever lose that.
Right, I agree.
Should never lose that. And so I really pray that they figure it out, and I pray that those that are pushing that agenda can take a step back and look further down the road and see where is that taking us in the
Yeah.
long run. Like it may be, oh cool, right? Like what does that look like in 20 years, in
Uh-huh.
30 years? You know what I mean? This is an art form. Hollywood, what we do is an art form, and it should we you need artists for that.
I know, absolutely. In your opinion, why are they trying to replace, replace actual writers and people who actually live these experiences
Hmm.
with a robot?
I'm assuming for the bottom line dollars.
Uh,
I'm assuming from what I hear, it's like a thing of say there's a room of 12 people, you remove 10, now you have two, you have AI,
mm,
you put the script in there, the two punch up what the AI did and add that heart back in. But it's like, no, again, you're missing in writers' rooms, it's not just about people who are talented or are writing, it's their, again, as you said, their life experiences. So I'm going to bring something, you and I could be in the same room for a show
right.
like a Blackish or something, right? And you're gonna have like, nah, he would never say that. He would do this, or this happened to me one
Yeah.
time, and I'm like, oh, but in my hood, we did this. We have a marriage there.
More authentic.
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh huh.
and so you miss that, and you're gonna continuously miss that. You know what I mean? And so I think that technology has its place, but I think that it should live in the space where, we are the creators of technology. Let's let it live in that space. Let us continue to create and do things that help us, not things that take us out of the equation altogether.
No, I
That
agree.
replace us. That's nonsense to me.
So you as a young girl right now,
Yeah. I
how
am a
would,
young girl right now. What
well,
you
I'm
mean?
younger, sorry,
What you trying to say?
younger,
No, I'm
no.
playing. I'm kidding. I'm
So
kidding.
you're a younger woman right now,
Yes.
and you're now looking to pursue a career in the entertainment industry with everything going on. How would you go about it?
Oof, well, it depends. I mean, there's so many different lanes when it comes to industry, right? So
Hmm.
if you're talking about music or you're talking about TV, even in TV, there's so many lanes. And so I think the first thing I would do is to focus on what your craft is, what your
Mm.
gift is, what your gifting is. If you love to be in front of the camera, that's a whole different experience than it is being behind the camera and being producing and directing and that kind of thing.
Is one easier than the other?
Oof, I would say no. I don't I'm not in front of the camera, so I can't speak to that. But I would say no. I think that everyone's journey is has its lumps and bumps.
Mm.
There is no. I think that's the misnomer in this day and age is that things should be easy, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I don't. I say that, and I also say that nothing beats hard work, but I also believe work smarter, not harder, right?
Hmm.
So all of that in a mixed bag. Um, a young lady starting out, find out what your passion is, what your craft is, what your gifting is, if you can, and also just dabble a little bit, right? Like if you're not sure if you want to be in front of the camera or behind, take a couple acting classes and see how that feels and do some
Right.
improv. And if you're like, oh, this makes me nervous and I don't feel comfortable, that's probably not your thing. That's probably
Uh-huh.
not your gifting. Because if you just shine in that space, that probably is your gifting. And there's a whole different trek and path that will take you that I can't speak to because that's not my world. But on the backhand side of the camera, same thing. I think you try different jobs. Like me, I was in music and then I did some stuff with Tyler with film and then I went into casting and then I was like, I want to be a producer and I just worked my way up from there. So I think you don't be afraid to try something new
Uh-huh.
and then don't be afraid to tap out if it's not bringing you joy. I feel like God created us to have fulfilled lives and we're supposed to be happy. And if you're miserable and you can't find peace, then that's not where you belong.
Right.
But if you can find peace and you love it and you're just making a little bit of money, keep going.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Keep going because the
Absolutely.
money the money always comes. Just don't chase the money, chase the dream, chase the
Hmm.
passion, chase the skill or whatever that is. The money always comes later.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
always does.
Now, do you think creating your own content is a good way to go on about it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we're creative people, and by nature, and so I think that um the world has opened up for content creators and that's streamers have allowed for goo gobs of new kinds of content to be explored by everyone, right? So now you have
Mm.
Netflixes and the Amazons, etc., and also smaller platforms, and so I think it's important to find your lane. That's another way to kind of hone in on your craft too. Get a following, see if people are interested,
Yeah.
let them ask you questions, be teachable, be willing to grow, and you can always change things, put on a different hat. You know what I mean? You
Yep.
don't have to pick one thing and live there forever. I think the days of that are over. This is my third or fourth career. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I'm not even 50. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And so I think it's a matter of going with what feels good to you and as long as you're still pouring in that hard work, still pouring in that stick to itiveness, that teachable nature, studying your craft, whatever that may be, you
Right.
you can do it till it gets to an end. You're like, this is not working no more. Left and go do something that's adjacent.
Yeah.
You know what I
That's
mean?
the beauty of. I think that's the beauty of entertainment. I love to see artists reinvent themselves,
Mm-hmm.
especially when even when you see the hip hop artists go to like a Ti go on film. I was just watching a movie. I don't want to promote movies
Yeah.
and support,
Yeah.
but he did a great job,
Yeah.
and I love seeing the transition.
It's a blessing to be a multi hyphenate, and I think
Hmm.
most of us are born with that. We're like multi talented. Some, the Bible talks about you get like one person got five gifts, one got three, one got one. If you have five things, explore them all. Just try them out. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just try them on for size and see. And if you try, it could be in chronological order. It could be all at once. Whatever works for you. But for me, yeah, I'm a multi hyphenate. I'm a executive producer. I'm a showrunner. I'm a TV executive. I'm a writer. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? I plan to my next one will be public speaking and doing more panels and things like that. And then now an entrepreneur as well. We're building our own production company platforms. So I'm like, I the world is my oyster. There's nothing that I can't do. I think that we can create our destiny. I think that God gave us, beautiful minds to manifest the things that we want and that are meant for us, that allow us to also use that gift to touch more people and to bless more people. Um, so as long as you're not doing anyone harm and doing yourself no harm,
Right.
have at it.
And so you're not a person who quits, obviously.
No.
But
Rehab is for quitters.
they're right. So if you have, but is there ever a, like you would say to a person, all right, you gotta, when is a good time to pivot is what I'm asking. When is a good time to, like, when do you see something and you're saying, you know what, I didn't try this for 2 years, it's time to quit.
I
Or not
think
quit, I'm gonna say quit,
mhm,
pivot. I'm gonna say
pivot. I mean, here's the thing. I think there's pivoting is not to be confused with quitting, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, Pivoting is important because, as in basketball, if this lane isn't working, you got to pivot on that other foot and get your shot.
Right.
So if you're not getting your shot in this lane, then pivot, and you can still use that skill set to pivot in a different direction. So when to do that though, I think your circumstance and your world tells you that. I think oftentimes um, God speaks to us in a whisper
Right.
and then writing on the wall and then the house is on fire. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And so I think it's a matter of really being grounded and centered in who you are
Mm-hmm.
and taking time to meditate, taking time to pray daily, right?
Mm.
To be in touch with who you are, where your thoughts are, being silent. Prayer is not just talking to God, it's also listening to God. So you pray and then you're like, okay, God, I hear you. Now what do you want to say? And just sit for 5, 10 minutes and just see what comes up in your spirit. Just see what pops into your mind. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, so I think the pivot, the timing of pivoting, um, you'll know. You'll
Yeah.
know. I think that you'll get opportunities that come out of left field. Like, oh, I want to invest in blah 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 blah. Do you have any? And you're like, well, I was actually thinking about that like 3 months ago, but but actually maybe now I should. You know what
Right.
I mean? It's like
Yep.
opportunities begin to come your way if you're open.
Yeah.
And so I think we just have to remain open always.
You mentioned something that's key in every interview we had thus far:
Mm.
meditation.
Yeah,
The meditation. What did you? So I assume you meditate
daily.
daily.
Mhm.
So some people, I see, I try to do it
Mhm.
every day.
Mhm.
Sometimes I end up going to sleep.
Mhm.
So
Same.
I'm too
But sometimes too,
relaxed.
and that's okay. I think that's okay. I think sometimes you have meditation and it elevates you and you feel like you're floating on the clouds and you can get messages. Sometimes you
Uh-huh.
meditate, you fall asleep. Sometimes you meditate and a song pops in your head and you get an inspiration for
Hmm.
a thought or for a business idea. I don't think that meditation is there's a right or wrong way to do it. I just think as long as you take the time, just make like for me, what I do is in the morning I set my alarm if I have to be up for the gym. Like I'm always late, but the
Uh-huh.
gym. But if I have to be there at 8, I set my alarm for like 7:15, and I meditate for 15 minutes, right
Right.
before I get out of bed. So I don't go and set up a whole thing, and that's just me because I that takes too much time, and then I have my emails and phone starts going off.
Yep.
If I can do it as soon as I wake up, and I'm like, okay, God, and I pray, and then I let it, and I'm just like, there, and I'm just letting it float, and it's also setting the tone for my day. Like today is going to be an amazing day, and I
Right.
say positive things to myself. I think oftentimes too that meditation, the world can be hard on us, and I think we are our worst critic. So I think in meditation it's important to say nice things to yourself,
Right.
and it's more important how we treat ourselves and other people treat how they treat us,
Big
because
facts.
they mirror that. So if you treat
Mm.
yourself kind and nice and say nice things to yourself, the world responds in kind,
I
and
agree.
people respond in kind.
I agree.
Yeah.
So tell us, what can we look out for? What should we support?
Oh my gosh. Definitely support the book, please. It's
Uh-huh.
called Doing It Scared, an inspirational guide to facing and conquering fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Amazon Prime right now. The audio book is there as well, and it's me doing the audio myself.
Nice.
So that was my first time doing my own voiceover too. I'm just doing all these things scared. I'm like,
You're
who's
not trying to
Trey?
leave nothing on the floor.
Why? Why?
Yeah,
Why? You have this life, and you don't know that you're gonna get another one. So just ride it till the wheels fall off,
I
right?
agree. Totally agree with you.
And so, but the audiobook is like $7 on Amazon. The book is like $14 on Amazon. Tell your friends about it. Write a review. I mean, the word of mouth matters.
Mm-hmm.
So please support that. Support my shows. Sisters is on Hulu right now. Secrets and Sisterhood. You can find it on Hulu. Binge it. It's 10 episodes of 10 Afghan sisters who are Muslim, and they are funny and quirky. And it's a really beautiful show because we're peeling back the layers of not like a normal docu series where it's just about a bunch of women sitting around drinking and talking.
Uh-huh.
This is a family of sisters, and so it's the family dynamic, and their mothers are part of it, and there's culture, and there's religion, and there's this dynamic of the younger Muslim sisters versus the older ones, and how they
That's right.
meet each other in the middle, and it's just really this beautiful symphony of womanhood on screen.
Nice.
So really, really awesome. It's multi generational. It's great. And my other show is The Next Black Millionaire, which is on Roku. So that's also bingeable. It's 6 episodes again, where we're following the journey of three entrepreneurs as they launch their businesses, and it's not a competition. It's just following their individual journeys, and it's really a beautiful way. I'm really proud of to be a part of that one. That's Macro and Roku and Shea Moisture, and to be on a show or doing a show and show running a show where you're promoting business, but they're not competing with each other, and it's black people, and it's just like, and they're supporting each other, and
We haven't seen that.
we
We haven't
haven't
seen
seen
it yet.
that. We haven't.
That's
So
very unique.
it's creating hopefully a new genre,
Yeah,
and a new wave
absolutely.
of that is the hope.
I think imagery is everything.
Yeah, yeah,
I believe imagery is everything. If you
yeah.
start to see people who look like you doing something you want to do, you'll have a bigger push towards your goals.
Absolutely. So the kids that are watching your podcast should definitely tune into that one because you have one company that cosmology they're doing hair tools for black people. So it's like the combs for the kinky curly hair
Hmm.
and all the products around it, blow dryers, the whole thing, which is great. They're on Target shelves now.
Hmm.
Another company that's called Undefined by a sister who is did the company by herself. She's the CEO and a solopreneur, and her whole skincare line all by her, and it's organic and democratizes beauty and all this beauty wonderful stuff. And then the third company is Scotch Boys, which is a hot sauce brand, and they're going to be the next Tabasco in the next 10 years, hopefully, is God willing, and they're just doing these sauces for wings, and it's great. It's great.
Nice.
So it's 6 episodes, and it also is a teaching tool, right? You're learning about business and how to launch a business. So I think black people are the greatest inventors of all time. We've invented almost everything
Everything.
that's here.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
You can
And
look it
so,
up. You can look it up. You find it.
exactly,
You'll see it too.
exactly. So for those as a kid, I know I was wanting to invent dolls, and I had all these ideas as a kid. I think that we are born with that gift, and so
Right.
for those that are watching, just tap into that because there's avenues that can make you really really rich and wealthy and change your life and your family's lives. So yeah,
So there you have it. Erica, thank you very much for your time.
thank you for having me.
Greatly appreciate
Yeah,
it.
of course.
Make sure y'all go support the talented, the relentless executive producer, TV producer,
Yeah.
Erica Bryant. If y'all enjoyed this episode, make sure y'all like. What is it? Like circle? What is it again? If y'all enjoyed this episode, make sure y'all like, comment, share, and subscribe. Yeah? No?